Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast. So glad you're here. If you are a marketing leader and you are exploring ABM, account-based marketing, and you want to kind of dive a little deeper, this is the episode for you. All right, we're back, Exploring Growth podcast, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Katrine Rasmussen, and she's actually out in Copenhagen, which is cool. It's like 7:30 p.m. her time there, and 1:30 in the afternoon. So I'm barely getting into my work day, and you're about to go to sleep. But yeah, so thanks, Katrine, for being on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. So we were introduced by Laura Erdem from Dream Data, which was a great conversation. And anybody's a friend of Laura. Laura is a friend of mine at this point because she's so fantastic at what she does. So we're here and we were discussing, what should we talk about that could bring some value to our audience, and we kind of landed on this idea of talking about ABM, or account-based marketing. And so to kind of set this up, I think this really is going to be really hugely valuable for the marketing director, marketing VP, and even CMOs that are listening at mid-level companies who are looking to get in front of and market themselves, sell themselves through to specific accounts. And generally those are going to be enterprise level, but you can take the same approach for a smaller type of company. So if that's you, buckle in. I think we're going to have a good conversation about ABM marketing and the framework in which a team should think about it. So with that, I have a little bit of experience with ABM. I've worked with, supported teams that have deployed ABM, but I'm by far not the expert on ABM. And so I'm glad to have you here today to talk through it and to sort of break it down for us. Let's start there. What do you think about ABM as it relates to what you're doing in your world and your team? How would you describe what is ABM?
Right. Great question to start us off. Well, account-based marketing, I think probably the most important thing to know is that it's sort of an opposite approach to more traditional inbound.
Mhm.
You could I hear this analogy all the time, right? Where inbound is basically fishing with a net.
Mhm.
You're going out, you're throwing a big net out, and you'll see what you are able to catch. You'll probably spend a lot of time sorting through all the leads that are coming through until you find the leads that is a good match with what you do and your company.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of resources, right? That you spend on just getting the net out and sorting through all the big fish, or sorry, all the small fish
All the
that are
small fish,
coming
yeah.
through, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas account based, sort of the opposite. It's sort of fishing for whales with a spear, right? Not
Mhm.
only do you know what type of whale that you're going for before you
Mhm.
even get started, you probably know the name of the whale. It's a specific whale that you're going after, right? And
Yeah.
you know that specific whale is a really good fit with what you're looking for, and you know that that whale is going to be able to feed you and your family for
Mhm.
years to come. Um,
Yes.
so that I really like that analogy, and so that's what we do at Pixels. um, ABM is a great framework for us because we work relatively large enterprise accounts, because we know that they are the best fit with the service that we offer.
Mhm.
So instead of doing more traditional inbound, where we're just like sitting back, trying to attract these leads through content, through paid search, organic, all of that. Before we even get started on our marketing, we know exactly who we're going after, and that's basically just a named list of target accounts of
Mhm.
actual companies that we know that would be a great fit for our service and for what we do. And because we have a, like, I'm sure all listeners here, right? Everyone has a limited resources, a limited team, right? So for us at least, we feel like that's the best use of our limited time and resources. It's basically to go out and do very customized, very personalized marketing toward the exact accounts that we know would be a great fit for what we do, what we offer.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a great explanation. And I love the analogy of fishing. It's exciting to think about bit on the outset, because it's almost like you can become, as a marketer, more of a scientist or an explorer, right? Where
Yeah.
you get this analogy of hunting a whale. Well, it's almost like not only do you know the type of whale, but you know its actual name, and you know where it lives or where it last was,
Yeah.
and you're going to put your boat right on top of the waters where you think it's going to be, and then you want to know everything about the whale past
Yeah.
its name. You want to know its weight. You
Exactly.
want to know how fast it runs. You want to know all the details, because the more that you can know about the intricacies of the organization and how they make decisions and all of those things, those are all become empowering to you and your team to do what you do, to put the right things in front of them.
Yeah,
So I think
and
that's such a great analogy.
yeah, yeah, and I like how you take it even further, because that's exactly what we do, right? For
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these accounts that we go after, we will have a very good understanding of what are the pain points,
Mm-hmm.
what is the type of content that we need to get in front of them for them to see us, to get their attention.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So that's a great start. And I think for anybody who doesn't know what ABM is now, you have a pretty clear picture. Now you're going to go whale hunting. We're not throwing nets anymore, but all the other stuff that, not that, inbound and content marketing and SEO and all the things, that's not, it's still good. That's all going to add to it as sort of a foundational thing. But
Absolutely.
but as you're building an ABM strategy, to go after a whale or 5 or 10 whales, maybe, um, what are some of the major components that you should think about as you're sort of building a framework?
Right. There's definitely a few things here. Probably the most important one, I'd say, is sales and marketing alignment.
Mm,
So ABM, just the name, right? It sort of implies that this is a marketing strategy, and it's not. It's really not. This is
mhm.
a business strategy. It's a go-to-market strategy.
Yes.
And if you think that as a marketing person, right, if you're sitting there in your silos and you think that this is something that you can do by yourself, you're dead wrong. You need your sales team involved in this, because this got to be a strategy that marketing team, sales team, potentially even the CS team, right? Something that
Mhm.
you do together. At least the way we do it, the way we work with it, for the account plans where we go where we do like very specific, very customized one-to-one ABM
Mhm.
campaigns just
Mhm.
toward one single company. That is something that we do with the sales team, because most of the time it's the sales team that will have come to us and they'll have said, so there's this account, it's out there. Can we work together on a strategy to get their attention, to speed up the sales process? How can we work together? So for me, at least, it's very much a sales enablement strategy,
Yes.
when we know the companies that we're going after. So it's gotta be something that you do with the sales team. We actually like to call it ABX, not ABM,
I like that.
just to signal that.
Yeah.
So that's like account based experiences or account based everything.
Yes. I love that. I think that's such a great way to do it, knowing how much sales and marketing teams are already not aligned when it comes to
Yeah.
regular marketing efforts. So to do that, it's almost like you're forming a new team.
Yes.
That's part of us are some of us are quote unquote marketers, some of us are quote unquote sales. So that's a great start, because marketing and sales alignment really kind of is the fabric. You have to have that underlayment in order to make any progress. Because if there's miscommunication at all, then it's going to be really crazy when you actually get into the efforts. I'm curious, at the heart of what you're doing in building a strategy, is it really focused around the complexity of the decisions that are made by the buyer? Is that really what you're building your strategy around, like what you're solving for? Is, because the way I think about it is like this, the decision that you need them to make to bring your company in at whatever level, because sometimes it can be various different ways. um, Typically there's more than one decision maker. There's maybe multiple departments that have to make decisions or be brought into the conversation. So are you solving for that complexity in your strategy, or is there another kind of central goal?
I'd say somewhat,
Okay.
um, but and that kind of actually brings me to positioning. because I think positioning, communication, brand, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
like really, really knowing who your ICP is, ideal customer profile is. I mean, I think that's actually the first thing that you need to have nailed before you
Mm-hmm.
even get started. And the reason why I say that is before a few years back, before we really nailed our positioning, before we started our ABM efforts, we would try to sell to a number of uh, buyers within an organization. So we sell at Pixels, we do image retouching at scale. So we would try to sell to e-com directors, ecom managers, studio directors, studio managers, and it took us a little while to realize that this decision is always made within the studio. And when we had that realization, that really helped us to hone in on positioning, on communication, and the type of content or the type of ABM strategy that we needed to work
Okay.
with. So when I say sort of, it's because we know exactly who we're going after, right? Studio
Mm-hmm.
director, studio manager, whoever is in charge of the photo studio.
Okay.
But we also, and this comes in handy, especially when we do run digital campaigns on LinkedIn, right? So obviously for ABM to work, it's got to be you're most likely going out after very large companies, very large account,
Yes.
meaning that you're actually able to set up campaigns on LinkedIn. It's only
Mm-hmm.
targeted toward one single company, and
Mm-hmm.
then narrow that down by seniority, role, job title, all
Mm-hmm.
of that. So when I say that we sort of market to more than just the decision maker, it's
Mm-hmm.
because you need 300 people in the LinkedIn audience. So we will reach quite a few people within the organization, within the studio. Maybe we even have to reach out and reach people in marketing, in e-com
Mm-hmm.
as well. So we do that. But then we have other tactics where we will make sure that it's the decision maker that's in focus, and the decision maker we will communicate with.
Right. Okay. So do you think about it like you build your ICP, and so you have this generalized idea of who you're going after and their needs and desires and et cetera, and then you look within the ICP to see what characteristics or character traits that this specific account you're going after um, owns or has, so that you can tailor your messaging to them. Is that the way you approach it?
Yeah, we definitely
Okay.
do that once in a while. I mean, we do have a few different frameworks. So we have the big target accounts. We also like to call them our Dream 100. Those are the ones that we really want to get in front of, right? We
Mm-hmm.
really want to close our priority accounts. For
Yeah.
those, it's going to be a relatively we tend to get new ones to switch those up once a quarter, right? So we may have like 10, 20 priority accounts that where we build one-to-one ABM programs each quarter. But for
Mm-hmm.
those, we will go in depth and we will learn what's their pain points, what do they care about, and then we will build out. Right now, we're working on a CSR report because we know that one of our target accounts are extremely focused on CSR, and this is
Yeah.
something that we need to have. So we'll gladly build that, even though that's a very big undertaking.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
but but we know it's important for this specific account, and we
Yeah.
also know, of course, that if it's not already important, I mean, this is something that will become more and more important for all the target accounts that we have as part of our target accounts, right?
Yeah.
So I think even though we do a lot of content with just one specific account in mind, all of that content is very applicable to the other target accounts, and
Mm-hmm.
even accounts that are not necessarily identified as a target account but may come in through some inbound activities. So
Sure.
even though it's a lot of work to develop very customized content to certain accounts with just one account in mind, it can be reused over and over and over. So we definitely go out, we'll do case studies about circular shopping, about
Hmm.
footwear, if we are trying to close one of those clients,
Hmm.
just to make sure that it's hyper targeted toward that target account that we have in mind. But
Hmm.
again, it is, I don't want to say universally applicable, but
Sure.
generally very applicable to most of the target accounts. And it is because we've done a very thorough job before we started, being hyper specific in terms of ICP.
Hmm.
We don't have a very broad ICP. It's very
Yeah.
very specific. So it means that the target accounts that falls within that ICP, they have a lot in common.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you said you work on about 10 every quarter. You'll take 10 new ones to dive deep on.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you guys determine whether you should go after 2 or 20, or how do you determine that number?
Oh, it's a good question, but I mean, this is so who we're going after and how many. That is something that trickles down from the sales team, right?
Okay.
It really depends on who's on the sales team, how busy are they, how many accounts do they need our help on, and then of
Hmm.
course, again, it depends on how we're doing on the marketing team, what's the resources that we have available in terms of content, in terms of digital marketing, in terms of event marketing, in terms of all of these things. Because so for example, right now we're building out that CSR report, right? That takes up quite a bit of our time, but then we'll have it available next quarter whenever there's a new target
I
account
see. Yeah.
that needs that. So it depends on if we have a lot of this available already, or if we have to sort of like build it from scratch. And that's very different from account to account, and it also really differs between like how far in the sales cycle are the
Hmm.
accounts that we roll into the program.
That's
Some
right.
might never have heard of us, so maybe
Yeah.
that's an awareness play. And some might be pretty far in the sales process already,
Hmm.
where we can assist with content, landing pages,
Hmm.
whatever it could be.
Okay, yeah, and then just for the audience to break that down a little further, I think what you're saying is some of your sales team may have reached out to X company and made inroads over the last 3 months, and they've taken the ball down the court for the most part. Now
Yeah,
they see that the writing's on the wall. They're in, maybe even in the pipeline, and they want to bring you guys in to support all those efforts. So the sales cycle for that may be 3 months.
yeah.
But if you're brought in the beginning for whatever reason, that could end up being a 6 month or even 18-month
Oh yeah.
time frame, depending on the size and nature of what
Yeah.
you're selling.
That's right. And we do, like I said before, it's enterprise B2B. We do have very
Mhm.
long sales cycles,
Right.
unfortunately, sometimes a little too long.
Yeah.
But that's also one of the things that we try to accelerate through APM programs like this. And I
Hmm.
think one thing that I think is interesting, and one thing that's a tactic or a goal of a lot of the work that we do as part of the ABM program,
Hmm.
um, I think I mean, we're tech marketers, right? We work in software as a service. We are so used to everything being very digital. We're used to jumping on Zoom calls,
Hmm.
booking meetings through Calendly, all of that. We think about ourselves as um, very tech tech minded and data
Right.
driven and all of that. But I think when we work B2B, enterprise sales cycles, complex product, complex, like you're saying before, there might be several decision makers, can be a very long process, right? I think one thing that we sometimes tend to forget when it comes to sales is that good old fashioned relationship building,
Hmm.
FaceTime, trust, all of those things that like B2B enterprise sales is, right?
Hmm.
So at least from a marketing perspective, and through all of these ABM programs, one of the things that we in the marketing team, we really, really help facilitate is to get our sales reps in front of our ICP, in front of our target accounts,
Hmm.
um, in real life FaceTime,
Hmm.
where they get to know each other, they get to to trust each other,
Sure.
and they actually get to just meet and have a conversation around something else than
Hmm.
retouching or studio or whatever it
Hmm.
is, right? And just build that very human relationship that
That's
I
right.
think is a very, very big part of the sales process that I think we sometimes tend to forget because we get so wrapped up in the process and the tech and all the digital things that we can do that we forget that
That's right.
maybe the most important component of selling these big enterprise deals is basically just trust and
The human.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the human behind all of it. And I've been a part of a lot of those meetings, and I would agree 100%. It's sometimes it can be done much quicker whenever there's just someone in front of another person asking the right
Yeah.
question, and being forthright about what the next step is. Sales cycles are what they are. I mean, you can only influence it to the degree you can influence
Yeah.
it. But I think whether it's at the end of the sales cycle or the beginning, or anywhere in between, having a person in front of a person. A lot
Yeah.
of those side conversations about the weather or about the industry or about, the regulation that just came down. How do you feel about that and what's happening internally? All these side conversations, they make up, this sort of gray matter that helps you make decisions on how to reach them more intimately or more intentionally.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at my notes here, and so far I have sales and marketing alignment, and positioning or communication brand, knowing your ICP, and basically relationships is the third one that I'm writing down here is, being human, making sure you're spending face time, actual in-person time. Where do we go next? What are the other components that we need to uncover?
Right. And I think I would just like to take this, like the relationships, the trust. I'll just like to take that a little bit further,
Sure.
just in terms of how do we actually do this? What are the
Hmm.
tactics that we use to get the sales reps in front of our
That's right.
ICP, right, and build those relationships? Because I think, I mean, if you've ever worked in sales, you know how hard it is or how hard it
Hmm.
can be to reach out, do those cold calls, and getting
Hmm.
those target accounts to agree on a demo or a meeting or just anything, right? They
Hmm.
they realize who you are and what you do, and it's going to be hard for you to get through if you're a sales rep, right? So
Yes.
what we do, Pixels, we try to take a little bit of a different approach with that, and that's where event marketing or
Hmm.
experience marketing, we like to call it, comes into the picture, right?
Hmm.
So we host a series of owned events that we take on the road. We will figure out, so where do we have enough target accounts in a specific city to host an event with 100 to 150 people, attendees at that event, target accounts, ICPs, decision makers, the ones that we really want to get in front of. Maybe the ones that the sales team has been trying to reach out to, but has not been able to get through to. So we'll take a bit of a different approach, right? We'll let the marketing team reach out. We'll let the marketing
Hmm.
team reach out to the decision maker and say, hi, we've noticed you. We're hosting this event in LA next month. You have a very interesting profile. Would you like to come and be part of a panel or be a keynote speaker at the event? So
Hmm.
we will fly them in, set them up in a nice hotel to strike their ego a bit, right? Um,
Hmm.
and what happens is that we'll have all those target accounts, decision makers in that room at that event. It's a full day thing. Um, it's a We pay a lot of attention to detail. It's a fun event. There's going to be a
Hmm.
welcome party the day before. There's going to be a VIP dinner the day of the event,
Hmm.
and we get to spend a full day in a room with all these target accounts from within the community. We get to build that community and host that, be the hero, right?
Hmm.
And our sales reps and our CSMs and our CEO, everyone, right? Well, not everyone within our company, but we'll be like around 20, 25 people from Pixels there, and we'll
Yeah.
interact with them. We'll build relationships. We'll build community, and we'll get that face time and build those relationships and build that trust. And it
Hmm.
sounds, when I talk about it like this, it sounds, I don't know if it sounds a little cold as a tactic, but it's also
Hmm.
just an amazing way to build a community and bring people
For
together
sure.
and have all that human interaction, which we all really really enjoy. So that's one way we use ABM and the marketing team to really facilitate
Yeah.
building that trust and building that relationships with the entire team and with the company essentially.
Yeah, it's not cold at all. I think you're leaning into a warmth. You know, you're building warmth with context. One thing I'm thinking about is okay, just for clarity, I think is when you host an event like this, are you inviting one whale to the event, or are you inviting multiple whales to an event?
No, no, multiple. We'll be
Okay.
somewhere between 100 and 150 attendees. And it's going to be a good mix of, obviously, we're going to have Pixels people there. We'll have a few of
Yes.
our partners.
Yes.
We'll
Okay.
invite existing customers that's already in that city.
Right.
And then we'll reach out and invite 10, 15 target accounts from
Yes.
within that area or even more. So
Mhm.
it's approval only, right? So we'll get to control who's at the event,
Mhm.
but it's important that it's a community,
Yes.
and that there's like a good variety with it at the event.
Yeah. So I have this sort of diagram that I show my clients usually whenever I kick off working with them, and it's a simple kind of at the top it's the buyer and stakeholders, influencers, different people that go into making the decision. At the bottom is the brand. That's where you and your company, your team, your culture. And on one side you have your clients, and then on the other side you have your referral partners,
Yeah,
allies, people.
yeah.
So if you look at,
Ecosystem.
yeah, it's an ecosystem,
Yeah,
and so what's cool about it is what you want to do is you want to engage and support all the conversations that are happening between all these parties. And the best way to do it is through an event. If you have an event, you can invite all of those people. They can all talk amongst themselves, and great things come from it. I mean, great ideas for content comes from it. Great, next steps with actual buyers come from it. And you know, the other people that are part of the ecosystem will continue and start and continue to sell for you. So there's so much that happens whenever you get people together and you are the host.
very true. And one of the things about our events is that we do not talk about ourselves. We do
Hmm.
not block out a 1 hour slot in the middle to just demo our product, right? We don't do that. It's not why we're doing this, right? Um, so what sometimes happen, and we see that in the survey, is that especially for those companies that don't know us so well, they will actually put in the survey, they'll say, hey, we'd love to see a demo of Pixels. We're a little bit sad that we didn't get to experience that at
Mm,
the event, right? And what better opportunity for the sales
there
reps
you
to
go.
reach out and give them the
There you go.
demo? They're asking for it.
So you've
So
built up enough demand in that event that they actually want what you want to give them.
exactly. So that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's great. It is. It
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
And you're right about the ecosystem and the partners and all of that, because most of the time, right, it's not our sales reps selling at that event. It's our
Mhm.
existing customers. It's our
Mhm.
partners. It's all those people that know us so well. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just comes together very nicely.
It does, yeah. It's such a great thing, and you can't help but birth community out of that because everyone's talking to everyone, and as long as you give them a platform to continue those conversations in some way, then you are doing some. You're putting yourself. I mean, your service has to be good, your technology has to be good, all the things that you're
Sure.
selling have to be good because otherwise, we've all just had a great time, met a lot of people, but what's the point, right? But assuming you have
Yeah.
good technology and a good product, then you are laying the foundation for years and years and years of sustainable growth because you are the lead, you are the host, and I love
Yeah.
that. I love that a lot.
Definitely.
So relationships and community and events, as a mechanism. Um, what else should they be thinking about? Is there anything else? What are the other major components that you think about when you put your framework together?
Right. Um, I guess that's one thing that we should probably have touched upon a little bit earlier in the conversation.
Okay.
And
That's okay.
that's basically is ABM, is that a framework or a strategy that makes a lot of sense for you and the business that you're running?
Mhm.
Because I just want to stress that in order to do that, right, in order to just have a very, very narrow list of target accounts that you're going after,
Mhm.
you need to know that those deals that you're going to close are going to be large enough to be worth it, right?
Yes.
So if you're small business going after small businesses mid-market, it is a volume game, right?
Mhm.
And you need volume to run your business, to grow. For us though, I think we've realized that it's not volume, it's not the amount of customers that we have that is actually going to take us to the next level. When we started looking at our data and our numbers, we realized that if we want to expand this business, if we want to grow, we need to close those whales
Mhm.
to actually take us that step further. And just
Mhm.
looking at our data this year, right, in Q1, 56% of all our revenue came from only 2% of our customers.
Mm.
Um, so I think it's just important to keep that in mind, that whether ABM is a strategy or a framework that's going to work for you,
Mhm.
you gotta work very large deals. You gotta have enterprise customers.
Yeah.
If not, it's probably not the best strategy, because you might end up wasting a lot of time on clients that are
Mhm.
not actually going to bring that much revenue. So I think that's a sort of like a prereq, obviously, to even go ahead and do this. It's
I
just
like that.
something to keep in mind.
For sure. I like it. I think it's, gets back to the what's the strategy for the business first.
Yes.
What's the model that you guys are, because it might make sense for the trajectory that you're on, for the shareholders that are involved, for all the different parties, that 2% of making up 56% is a good thing. But for another business and another industry with different stakeholders, it might not be a good thing. So, the business decision is important. And that kind of leads me into a question I had. I think a lot of bona fide marketers that are really want to be, worth their role and growing in their role, is how to measure success.
Mm,
So, I think that's a business question too. No matter what the stakes are, with an ABM strategy, how do you approach measuring results, I guess in general, but then differently than you would another type of marketing um, plan?
right. That's a really good question. Um, because well, at least the way we work, right? We every single day, every single week, every single month, we'll look at well, we look at MQLs, but we also look
Mhm.
at pipeline, inbound, outbound. We look at close won bookings, inbound and outbound.
Mhm.
What you need to keep in mind with ABM is that for all the target accounts that we have in our system, we use HubSpot. Don't have any fancy ABM software. That gets
Mhm.
very, very expensive, and I think you need to have more target accounts, bigger sales team. That what we do
Mhm.
for that to make sense, right? We work
Mhm.
well in HubSpot. It's fine. But
Sure.
what you need to keep in mind from a marketing perspective, because we like to go in and look at things like last touch, to see, was this a MQL that was brought in by
Mhm.
marketing. But for us, at least, what we'll do when we start an ABM program is that we'll import all the target accounts into HubSpot. So
Okay.
there's never going to be a first touch or a last touch. Well, maybe a last touch, but at least not a first touch, right? That is brought by marketing.
Mhm.
Everything is essentially gonna be outbound, because
It's all outbound. Yeah.
it's
Right.
an import. It was a sales team, right? So how
Right.
how do we judge that? So I think one thing that is important, and same goes with event, actually, especially owned events. The event itself is never going to be the first touch point. It's going to be maybe
Yeah. There's
direct.
no way
It's
it
going to
could be.
be late. No, exactly. There's no way it
Yeah.
could be. It's just not possible, right? When we look
Right.
at the numbers. So and that's where Dream Data, which is an attribution tool that we use, comes
Yeah.
into play.
Okay.
Because like I've said before, we have, at least we can have very long sales cycles. They can be anywhere from 90 days to 2 years. So what I like to do in Dream Data, you can go in, you can look at the deal or the account, and you can see every single touch point
Mm-hmm.
across contexts, across channels, across everything, right? So we have a very nice visual
Yeah.
representation, and then you can go in and you can sort on different attribution models. You can look at linear, first touch, last touch, data driven, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do, so we also we import lists from HubSpot directly into Dream Data. So any list that has attended an event in the
Mm-hmm.
list name, they will show up as a channel event. We'll be able to tell, did they signed up for an event, they attended an event, did they did we close the deal, was the deal added to pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
was it, did it become business at some point? So we're actually able to go in and for every single event that we're looking at, we're able
Mm-hmm.
to see who has closed, who's still in pipeline, what's the sales cycles like, is it shorter, longer than the other ones that didn't come to an event. And it's similar thing with ABM, right? And I think probably the beautiful thing about ABM, at least at the scale that we do it, which is not super big or super large scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
10 accounts each quarter, or maybe a little bit more than that. We have those marked as target accounts in HubSpot. We know exactly who they are. We'll know if it closes, right? Because it has such a high value.
Right.
So in that sense, it's really not that difficult to track, because you know who
That's
they
right.
are, work on them for a while, you know their
Yeah.
pain points, you know them in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll have a property in HubSpot, right? Their target account, you'll see what tier they are. So it's not super complicated, at least the scale that we run these programs at, to know
Sure.
whether a target account has closed or not. So
Yeah, it's not completely manual, but it is sort of, because it's incremental, because you've got
yeah,
at least probably 3 to 5 people always looking at that every single
yeah,
day, I would think,
oh
because
yeah,
that's your whole work, is to try to get this account
yes,
closed.
yes,
So you don't need all of the, connections behind the scenes that bring it to light. You
no,
see it, it's transparent. So,
exactly,
and then in that regard, I agree. As you were talking, it kind of came to mind, and this is a little bit off the topic of measuring success, but while I do agree events are, primo, they're like gold for bringing everything together. What would you say is the typically, like, do you have an inception point where, do you want to get people to an event first, or do you just want them to get to an event at some point? Or how much are events part of your strategy versus, sending cold emails, getting on the phone, or, stalking them on LinkedIn or whatever it may be?
yeah, well, we do all of those things.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. I think I wish I was able to tell you that we want to get this account to an event when they've reached the awareness stage and they're this and this far in the sales cycle. But
Mhm.
at least the way we run things, right, we'll have 4 of the larger events every year. This year we already had one in LA. Next one is coming up in Berlin next week. Then we'll have New York and London.
Mhm.
And since we only have 4 events, where that account is going to be in their life cycle states, right?
I
Um,
see.
it's unfortunately it's not necessarily something we're able to control in that
Right.
much detail.
So the
So I
events
think
are more pre-planned.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So so I guess it's more a matter of actually getting them there, getting in front of them.
Yes.
And we don't even if they just closed, right, they've just become a customer, we'll definitely still want them to go there, because
Yes.
relationships are still
Mhm.
the most important thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that frames it a little bit better for me, I think, is you already know you have these events coming
Yeah,
up. So you have these very pivotal moments that, if we can get them there, then that's going to be, heavy in lifting the relationship and the
yeah.
deal.
And it
So
might
a lot of your
actually
effort can be,
inform where we're going to have the next event, might actually inform which target accounts do we pick this
yes.
quarter.
Yes.
then we'll pick target accounts that are in the vicinity
Yeah,
of,
that
I
makes so
mean,
much
West
sense. Yeah,
Coast, East Coast, Europe, so forth, right? So
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great because you can really dial in resources. Is your team distributed globally? Or are you all in one place?
No, no, no. We're a very global team. Marketing team at this point. We are few people in Copenhagen, few people in Hanoi, one person in
Mm.
Prague, one person in Palma, one person in Barcelona.
Okay, yeah,
We don't have anyone in the US at this moment because trying to run meetings, like weekly meetings with people in Asia, Europe, and US, that's a
that,
bitch.
that can be tough. That can be
Yeah,
tough. You'd be working
but
24/7.
oh yeah, but we've got sales and CS obviously in across Europe and US as well, and that's also, even though our market is global, I mean, we have to really prioritize our resources, right? So even though we have customers all over the place, where we do our marketing and our sales efforts, that's in EU or in Europe
Mhm.
and in the US. And that's basically because that's where we have our CS and sales teams.
Got you. Yeah. So, this is such a great breakdown. By the way, I really appreciate it. I think people listening to this are going to get so much value because if they're just kind of opening the door to ABM, this is such a great framework for them to understand it and maybe even adopt some of it. They may already be doing a lot of these things, but not thinking about them in this way, which I see to be
Yeah.
the case a lot. So, is there anything else you want to say? Are we missing anything here for kind of like this high level ABM discussion?
I think just very high level, just one thing I'd like to mention as well. We do work, or at least we try to work a lot with our LinkedIn presence, social selling. I think
Mhm.
that's also an amazing way of establishing ourselves and our sales leaders, our CS teams
Mhm.
as thought leaders, and also building relationships and community. So that's another big component, and we use that a lot as well when it comes to attracting the right accounts to our events. So that's the thought leadership, the branding,
Mhm.
the social selling part of it. So we do spend a lot of resources and a lot of time, not only posting from our company account, but really encouraging and helping entire team to be very active all across
That sounds like a great next discussion. If I could have you back, we could dive into that
LinkedIn.
because I think that sort of like the content side, that it sort of becomes a repository of content that can be utilized across the organization. I think brand is has similarities, and if you're on LinkedIn and as a company and you're very intentional about how you're doing it, you're supporting all of the different people that are part of ABM or your sales team. Um, there's it's sort of like the rising tide lifts all boats. Again, you all the
Mm-hmm.
efforts that are happening there can be dialed in for certain roles and certain accounts, but they're going to lift other people who are on the bubble or the outskirts of buying.
Absolutely.
That's great. This has been such a great conversation. I very much appreciate it, and I definitely want to have you back and dive deeper into the social selling part of it, and maybe even multiple getting into some of these other ones. I think there's so much to. This is such an exciting topic for me personally because again, like to the nature of this channel, exploring growth. Like I think as an ABM uh, strategy, it's about exploration to find the the key that unlocks that account, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
very, it's very intriguing about, you can use the same channels, you can use the same methods, but this is a whole different beast because it's one, it's a different company than the last company. They all are not the same. So it kind of, gives you a new sense about the same work, which can be exciting. So,
Very true.
well, thanks again. And we will link your LinkedIn down below. We can also link to pixels.com, your company. Anything else you want us to throw in the description?
Um, I think that's probably about it.
Okay. If people want to reach you, LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Definitely.
Great. Thanks again. And we'll have to do this again.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you're getting value out of this. If you didn't know, we have an email newsletter that follows this podcast, Exploring Growth newsletter. If you go to harvardmurray.com and you click on podcast at the top, you'll see a little submission box there about quarter of the way down. You can sign up for the email. Every week, I literally sit down and write my thoughts of what's going through my head at the moment. Things that I'm dealing with clients, concepts that I'm learning or deployed that have worked. I talk about everything that marketing, sales, customer success, everything in between. So if that's something that you're interested in reading or subscribing to, definitely go there and check that out.